Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Energy Speaks Back, powered by B2B Energy. My name is Paul Webb, the founder of B2B Energy, and I'm also your host. Each week, I bring to you energy experts from around the world. This is episode 173. Our purpose, as always, is to provide a good understanding of energy management knowledge from around the world, which is available today for us to deliver savings that impact on our planet. Welcome, energy enthusiasts, to another enlightening episode of Energy Speaks Back, where I delve deep into our guests' origin and their knowledge within our industry. Please also look out for the video on my YouTube channel. In this episode, I meet with an energy entrepreneur who has truly impressed me with how he has gone about his business strategy from his background in finance to driving a solar business that makes perfect sense. So without any further ado, let us listen to Perfect Sense from Gary Brandwood, Perfect Sense Energy. Good afternoon, Gary. How are you today?
I'm really well, thanks, Paul. Nice to see you.
Brilliant. I know we've got a slight time difference because I'm 6 hours in front of you, but how's the weather there today? Holding up?
It's mixed, typical British summer weather. So bit of cloud, bit of sun,
And
hopefully no rain.
you're in the Manchester area, aren't you?
We're in between Manchester and Liverpool, in the northwest.
Right.
So we're up in the northwest of England. But we do work nationwide, so we do get all over the place.
But sort of where you are today, you do get your fair share of the rain, don't you?
Now and again, now and again. It's been known to rain in Manchester sometimes, but we all need that. We all need that. We don't want any more hosepipe bans, do we?
No, exactly. So Gary, we've met based on the B2B Energy Group. You joined us as a member, and Andy's leading the charge within that group. So I know a little bit about yourself and your organisation, but for the benefit of our audience today, can you give us some background to yourself, your origin story, and maybe your organisation?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem. So I've had two careers really after university. I was a chef for a few years before university, so that's probably three careers, but that only lasted a few years. And then after I went to university, I went into financial services and insurance. So I worked for the cooperative group for 10 years in various different locations and different job roles. But latterly, I was working in a headquarters in Manchester, which was a 17-story vertical office block. And the cooperative group are ethical and sustainable, and they were looking to show off their sustainability credentials. Before it was a bit more fashionable than it is now. And they put solar on 3 vertical elevations of their building on the lift shaft. And it was actually delivered by Solar Century at the time, who were obviously a pioneer in that market. And it used bespoke manufactured Sharp electronics panels that are still there today. So they launched that to a big fanfare. I think it was either Tony Blair or Gordon Brown came to open it up, and we got on the national news, and clearly cooperative group was shouting about how sustainable they were and were leading the way. And so I was working in that building at the time, so that really piqued my interest in solar PV. And then it was around 2009 that was launched, and there was a big financial crash at the time as well, if you remember.
Yeah.
So I unfortunately got made redundant along with 3,000 others out of the cooperative group at that time, and then decided to kind of realign what I wanted to do. So at the time, financial services was going through a change. There was a lot of compliance and a lot of changes in the market. And I just decided that I fancied a change. The bit that I really liked about financial advice was helping people, giving them advice, finding out about what their problems, their worries, their dreams, ambitions were, and helping them to put a plan in place to get towards that. And I love that part of it. I love being face to face with clients and giving best advice. And I didn't like the 6 or 8 hours of paperwork afterwards. So I decided that I wanted to do something that was maybe a bit less corporate, a little bit less admin based, and a little more exciting, really, and ethical. So I decided that solar PV was going to be a really exciting place to be, following my experience of the co-op and the project at the Miller Street Tower. Started doing some research. At the time, Ed Miliband, I think, came to the forefront, and Labour adopted the German model of a feed-in tariff scheme for solar PV to kind of kick off the market and to encourage growth within the sector. And I just looked at it from all angles. I looked at it from a financial angle. I looked at it from a best advice angle, and also from an ethical and environmental angle as well. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized that it really is a win-win-win situation for everyone. Because the client gets best advice, the client has a great return on investment, the property is enhanced by its value and its energy efficiency, and the planet ultimately benefits because of the carbon reductions associated with not having to buy as much power from the grid. So I couldn't see any downside, really, apart from the fact that it was very early adopter stage in 2009, 2010. But apart from that early adopter restriction, then I really thought that this would really take off. So I looked into it in detail, and at the time I just set up on my own as an independent consultant, and I started off doing some domestic solar sales for a very short time, maybe 6 months, while I learned about the technology, I learned about the process, I learned about the installation methods. I could see it really gaining traction even in that short period of time. So I then set up Perfect Sense Energy 2010, and was quickly moving towards the larger and larger projects, which excited me a bit more than the domestic side of things. But I did learn quite a lot in the domestic setting. I learned a lot about what to do, how the technology works, also about what not to do, as far as some domestic sales practices that I was being told to do. I didn't agree with, so I became independent and started to look for the bigger projects, and started to work in agriculture, and started to chase down landlords who were looking at improving the efficiency of the buildings, and obviously energy intensive businesses as well. So I think the fact that solar PV is good for the people that buy it, it's good for the environment, and it's good for driving net zero. I think it just all the stars aligned, basically, and I decided that I would dedicate the rest of my career to it. So as the traction grew and the technology became more mainstream and accepted, as you mentioned, Paul, people didn't think solar panels would work in Manchester back in 2010.
I was going to raise this because I was looking at, we was given significant amounts of money by this organisation who wanted to fund at that time, and we found every time we looked at a job, we go, no, the return on investment wasn't enough. So we was coming further and further south every time. And then the M4 corridor become quite the main area. That and everything south was the main interest. Was you finding that, or was you finding that Manchester or the northern areas were still prolific regarding solar installations?
The early models that were created by MTS and the like were very crude, let's say, with regard to how they looked at the irradiance in a particular part of the world, the part of the country.
Yeah.
I think models have become more sophisticated over time. But yeah, there is clearly a difference between South, the Midlands, the North, Scotland. But it's probably not as pronounced as you might imagine. I think the models have been more refined and more sophisticated these days. So from the south coast to the northwest of England, you'll probably see around 10 to 12% reduction in annual yield. And if you go up to Scotland, maybe another 5 or 10. But it's not hugely pronounced, and it certainly is not a deal breaker in the performance stats. There's many schemes now where we look at the annual yield, the energy savings, the tax savings that you can get from investing in solar PV as well. And we can break even on a capex basis on a very simple model within about 3 years.
Wow.
Usually, so 3 to 4 years is typical.
Yeah.
So yeah, irrespective of where it is in the UK, it's going to be a strong business case no matter what, really. So that's what kind of drove me into the market, and I've never looked back since, really.
What's been the stepping stone into that type of industry? That must have been a challenge for you. Did you find sort of becoming more technical was the thing? I know you talked about sort of the financial aspects of it, and that you feel very home with. But did you find the technical aspects of it a challenge at the time?
A little bit. I think from a commercial point of view, I'm not a trained electrician. I'm not a heavily operationally led. But from a commercial point of view, you've just got to understand the technology in enough detail to be credible and to be able to explain it to other people.
Yeah.
And in reality, solar PV systems aren't particularly complex. They don't generally have any moving parts other than maybe a cooling fan in the inverter. And they just sit there and do the job. When they're designed right and installed right, and you select high quality equipment that's proven, and you put it together in a very considered, careful, engineered way, and integrate it into the building in such a way where it'll work for decades to come, then there isn't too much to really explain to customers about the technicalities. They harvest the light and turn it into free power. The inverters within the system clearly are a complex bit of kit. Changing the power from DC to AC and synchronizing with the grid multiple times every second for frequency and voltage and all the rest of it. But ultimately, the simple thing is that power comes from the roof as DC power from the silicon cells in the solar panels. The inverter changes it to AC power, and it pushes it into the building at 1 volt higher than the grid is at any one time.
Yeah.
And that 1 volt higher electrical voltage is a slight increase in electrical pressure. So it has priority to get used first by the loads. That's really all anyone needs to understand.
Yeah.
It's a supplementary power source that gets bolted onto your supply, and it displaces your need for grid power when it's daylight. That's as technical as it needs to be.
And are we seeing a lot of transition now to batteries? Is there a lot of the need for putting batteries onto installations?
Yeah, absolutely. It's starting to gain traction. For domestic scenarios, absolute no-brainer, because there's a lot of power being generated on the roof during the daytime when typically there's not a lot of activity in the home unless you've got a retired couple, for example. So yeah, storing power in the daytime for use at night, perfect application for domestic usage. And again, for grid scale, co-locating them with solar farms and wind farms, and even just using them for stabilizing the grid and participating in demand response and capacity markets and all those things also makes a hell of a lot of sense. The grid needs to be more resilient, and it needs to rely less on fossil fuel ramp ups and diesel generators to balance the grid at times of peaks and troughs. And battery storage will absolutely play a crucial part in that. With regard to the middle of those size scales, so domestic and utility scale, if you like, make perfect sense. In the middle, you've got factories and office blocks and everything else. I'd say they're still in the early adopter stage for battery adoption because the business case is complex. If you look at the cost and deployment business case for battery storage just to soak up excess solar, for example, that a factory might be creating at the weekend, then it's still a little bit too expensive to be justified just for that particular function. But as the market develops and as the grid gets smarter and as businesses adoption of flexible buying contracts and adapting to how they buy power, when they buy power, how they can leverage the cheapest forms of power at certain times in the 24-hour cycle, then batteries will become more and more popular. So I'd say right now, there's lots of battery storage being deployed. I think the forward-thinking businesses are investing in it because they can see the future and how they're going to be able to benefit from it in the long term. But I think it will become mainstream in the next 2 or 3 years in particular. Yeah.
Yeah. And does perfect sense do other things apart from solar? Have you transitioned as well and transformed into and evolved your technology offering?
Yeah, we've kind of gone the other way, really. We started as a multi-technology and multi-service offering. Our strapline has always been we help businesses to buy better, use less, and generate your own power. And obviously, the buy better would have been for energy contracts and both import and export contracts. We help businesses to use less power through LED lighting a lot. 5, 6, 7 years ago, we did a lot of LED lighting upgrades when it was prevalent that lots of factories and offices needed to adopt that technology. We don't do so much of that now. It's a saturated market. And then the generate your own has become our mainstream. So it probably used to be 50 or 60% of our turnover was solar PV. Now it's more like kind of 80 to 90%. So yes, we do try to take a holistic view. And again, this is why joining the B2B Energy Network has been really useful to us to tap into other expertise that can help our clients to add more value and drive down those efficiencies so that the solar PV can work even harder and create even more value if you're also making the building as efficient as it can be. Yeah. It makes sense to do that. We always use the adage of putting solar onto a factory that's got 250 watt metal halide high bay lighting, for example, is a bit like pouring water into a leaky bucket.
Yeah.
We often advise clients to get the low hanging fruit energy efficiency savings done first, and then we look at the half hourly data and we very carefully then size the solar PV system to meet the future demands of the site. There is still a scope in oversizing solar PV because of future electrification of heat, electrification of transport, and automation of pretty much everything. In warehouse and in logistics, for example, the amount of automation is really increasing year on year. Yeah. And warehouses haven't been particularly high consumers of energy in the past, but they absolutely will be in the future with the electrification of forklift trucks, and then heat sources will go off fossil fuels and turn to heat sources like heat pumps and direct air blowing electrical heating. So most places will consume a lot more electricity in the future than they do now. So there's still scope in future-proofing your solar PV system to not only meet your current demand, but also meet the planned future demand as well.
Yeah. Gary, I remember when we first met and you and Andy were talking, and all the way through that, in the back of my mind, I just kept wanting to say, well, that makes perfect sense. Where does that name come from? What made you think of it? I'm really intrigued about it because even now, when you're talking, this guy's
Yeah,
talking perfect sense.
it's amazing how many times I've heard that over the years. But yeah, I mean, it was when I came out of financial services, I just wanted to focus on giving best advice. And that's the part of financial advisory process that I really liked the most. I just wanted to put things in a way that everyone can understand, not overly complex or jargon filled, which again, financial services industry and a lot of industries full of jargon, full
Yeah,
of
yeah,
terms that the layman doesn't know and understand, and it excludes people. It makes people feel like that they're not part of it. That they're on the outside of these industries. So I wanted to choose a name where clients could feel that we were approachable. We weren't some faceless company with a name that nobody understands or doesn't know what it stands for. And I just wanted to make it clear from the outset, even from naming the company, that we're only going to give good advice. We're only going to advise on technologies and services that are proven and will allow people to understand and buy into it. You know, if you can explain something in a way that an 8-year-old can understand,
yeah.
then it's accessible for everyone. And I just wanted to kind of get that message across that everything we do, should make perfect sense. It should be a no-brainer to adopt our recommendations, if you like. So that's where the thinking came from, really.
And you have your own network, don't you, of suppliers and people that you would recommend to such. Can you tell us about that more?
Yeah, we have three sales channels. So we have a direct to end user channel, of course. So we generate inquiries through different marketing techniques, of course, and the fact that we've been around a long time, people do come to us. So we sell to direct to end user. We haven't actually focused on the domestic market. It's all been B2B, commercial solar that we've actually installed. So direct to end user will be anywhere from a primary school through to a multi-million pound food production facility, for example. We've just actually installed solar on what we've been told is the Europe's biggest ice factory, ice cube factory.
Wow.
So yeah, it can be anywhere, between those things. We do some social value stuff as well. So we help community centres locally to adapt technologies, and we do that for very beneficial terms for them to help them out. But it can be anywhere from a 20 kilowatt system of solar to a 2 megawatt system of solar on a big factory. We do that for direct end users. We've also got a partner channel, which is a two-way partnership model where companies that speak to our target market, and primarily they are in the energy industry in some way, shape, or form, whether they are ESOS assessors or carbon consultants or net zero consultancies or high-end energy brokerage, flex buying type trading desks. They know us. They have dealt with us for years. They are confident in what we offer with regard to product, services, advice, and quality of delivery. And they introduce their clients to us. So we operate that partner model. And wherever possible, we give referrals back as well, of course, for their area of expertise. Partnerships only really work if it's a two-way street. So we have a directory internal, a bit like you guys do. Yours is public, ours is private. But we have a directory of partners and what services they offer. And we try to send leads back for our clients to our network of referrers as well for their services. So if someone needs an ESOS report or a a display energy certificate, or they've told us that they've got an energy contract up for renewal, we'll kind of pass them out to the best fit in our directory of partner referrers. The third channel that we operate is called the contracting channel. So this is where we are installing solar for anyone that's not an end user. So it's landlords, managing agents, typically main contractors on a new build, M&E contracts and consultancies on a refurb project or a dilapidation. Lots of those going on at the minute where landlords are having to improve their building for the minimum energy efficiency standard regulations, the ME standards. Most landlords want to see their properties at EPC level B or better nowadays.
Yeah.
So every time there's a vacancy, every time there's a turnaround of tenants, they'll do an energy efficiency upgrade at the same time. We're doing a lot of them. And increasingly as well, we install for solar investors. So there's lots of money on the sidelines from all different sources in the billions that want to give away free solar to factories and production plants, etc. They will provide they'll employ someone like us to do the design, development, modeling, proposal, specification, and then they're happy to pay for solar PV to be installed on large energy use premises. And what they'll tend to do is just enter into a power purchase agreement. So they'll offer the power coming off the solar plant at around half of what the client can buy it from the grid at. It's the general rule of thumb. Sometimes it's a little bit more, sometimes it's a little bit less, but generally about half price compared to grid power can be deployed by a solar investor. And those investors need companies like us to design, supply, and deliver the system. So we'll do that increasingly as well. So they're the three channels and how we go to market: direct to end user, partner channel, which is a two-way street, as you're aware, Paul, and then the contracting channel as well for people who are not the end user but also will benefit from solar.
And we smiled earlier about the Manchester story. You don't just do stuff in Manchester. We know that. How far do you reach? Where's the furthest you've been?
So furthest north we've installed is Aberdeen, and then the furthest south we've installed is the Isle of Wight,
right,
and everywhere in between. So not quite international yet.
No overseas stuff yet. No.
Yeah. So anywhere from Scotland through to East Anglia, through to South Wales, and down on the south coast as well. With Portsmouth, Hastings. We've got a portfolio now of over 300 commercial PV sites.
Excellent.
They've been built up over the years.
Do you measure all of that? Do you monitor all that centrally?
Absolutely. Every single one of the systems will have been installed with a monitoring system, and most of them are still online and we can see them. So we have a total of around 600 inverters out there that are individually monitored, over 313 sites, I think it is now, totaling about 36 megawatts of power. So we can see on screen exactly how much accumulation of those systems has generated in any one day, any one month, any one year. And we also have over half of them under an ongoing operational maintenance contract as well. Yeah. So we're not just, an installation company and then walk away. We will look after our clients for the whole life cycle. So we include our monitoring and maintenance package for the first 12 months anyway, on every single job, to make sure that the client has the peace of mind to know that we'll prove that our system does what it's supposed to do over that first 12 months. And then we'll ask the clients to sign up to an ongoing operational maintenance package, which is performance monitoring every quarter and an annual inspection on site from a qualified electrician to look at everything around the system, as you do with any valuable asset, really.
So I'm intrigued, though. You were sort of intimating that not everyone takes that up? Is there people that doesn't take the maintenance up long term?
Sometimes there's the odd company that wants to either look after it themselves. Some of
Yeah,
our clients do have electrical staff that are knowledgeable enough to do that on site. Sometimes, obviously, people get bought out by acquisitions and will get taken over by a different facilities team. But yeah, I'd say the majority of our installations are under contract. They do fall under the 5 yearly electrical inspection regime. So every building has to have an EICR every 5 years.
yeah,
That is the absolute minimum through regulation. However, most insurance companies now do insist on an annual check for solar PV
right.
because it's obviously it's a technical system. It needs to be looked after, and the insurers like to see that it's being fully maintained for their kind of risk management purposes, if you like. So, yeah, the vast majority of systems are looked after in some way, shape, or form.
And what's your thoughts about the sort of long term or longevity about these systems regarding sustainability? You know, people are drawing lines regarding 20 years, 25 years. What's your thoughts around this and replacing on the sustainability side of it? Do you have any opinion on that?
Well, the solar panels themselves now actually come with a 30-year performance warranty.
Right.
So most of our panels now are actually double glass. So glass on the front, glass on the back. Very, very robust. As I say, no moving parts to them. They just harvest the light and excite the electrons and send DC power down into the building. So there's not a lot apart from cleanliness that you just have to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
And again, cleanliness is very site specific. Some systems that I know out there have never been cleaned in 10 years and are absolutely fine. Some need cleaning every year because they're next to a particularly dusty site or a particularly dusty environment, for example. The vast majority sit there and do the job. So the panels themselves, it would be safe to say that they shouldn't need replacing in the lifetime of the system. The inverters have at least 5-year warranty. We actually double that up to 10 years on everything that we install. So with a 3 to 4 year payback on a PV system, you should be quite confident that the system will have paid for itself 2 or 3 times over before there's any risk of any part of the system going out of warranty and having to incur any other major infrastructure costs. We have started to see some inverters needing replacing, and they're on our kind of 13, 14, 15-year-old systems. Well, the failure rate is very, very low. It's certainly less than 1% of our inverters that we've ever installed have needed to be replaced, and that's over a long, long period of time. So with a 10-year warranty as a minimum, I think it's quite kind of safe to say that we've been going 15 years. Most of our systems now are, anywhere between 10 and 1 year old. We haven't needed to do a full inverter replacement repowering project on any of our systems. Of course, you get the odd one that goes pop and needs to be replaced under warranty. But as I say, it's very, very rare. I would say if a solar PV system is designed fully and installed with high quality equipment and installed professionally with the best of engineering, then it can happily last for 30 years plus. You may need to replace the inverter set once in that 30-year period, maybe after 15 years. But that in itself is not necessarily a huge cost these days. Inverter costs have come down quite a lot in recent years. So it's a very robust system that kind of just sits there and does its job if looked after correctly and designed correctly in the first place.
Yeah. Tell us about the future. 15 years in, how's the future look for yourselves?
I think more and more diversification of technologies. So we believe that solar PV is a foundation technology. So once you have a solar powered site, you automatically find new ways to benefit and utilize that free power that's coming off the roof. And we've seen clients that we've helped to develop those theories by sometimes changing shift patterns to do more intensive energy work during the peak of the days. And also maybe 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. when solar is producing most. They've shifted energy intensive processes to those particular times so that they can have a competitive advantage. We've seen clients move some processes to weekends and put a skeleton shift on so that they can benefit from the solar power coming off the roof on Saturdays and Sundays where they never would have traditionally done that in the past. Excess solar, of course, can be routed into batteries, as we have mentioned before. It can be routed in to create free hot water for washdown or processes, if it's a food factory, for example. It's a brilliant match for HVAC systems that are providing cooling, because when the cooling is working the hardest on the brightest spring and summer days, then the solar is working really hard then as well and providing those HVAC systems with the free power that they thrive on, I guess. So, as I say, I think solar is a technology where it leads to other energy efficiency decisions, and it can be extended in the future. It can be phased. It's not it's not necessarily a fit and forget scenario where you've only got one chance to do solar. You can take it in phases and expand it over the time. It's pretty modular, as long as you've got the roof space. So we believe that solar PV will always be a bedrock technology that's proven. It's pretty simple if you get it if you get it right and deal with experienced installers like us. But then it leads to other things. So bi-directional car charging, for example, and trucks. We're going to be able to put free power into big batteries that happen to be on wheels in the car park. And then those batteries on wheels in the car park can support the factory as well at peak times, for example, and stop factories having to buy power at the most expensive times from the grid. And again, the technology to integrate those things into buildings is already there. We're not talking about the future. We're not talking about theories. We're talking about things that already exist and are being tested in the field right now. And again, solar then becomes part of a holistic energy management system that, is a crucial part of that mix, really.
It's quite refreshing to hear this, because originally solar was like, when you're doing energy management, focus on the people, then we start looking at upgrading systems. Then the capex started kicking in after 3 years. But what you're saying now is the capex side of it could come in earlier, and you're basically saying that the solar could become like the entry level to energy management.
Absolutely.
To a certain extent, obviously, different clients, you've got to balance each side of the coin as such. But you are talking. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
It does, Paul. It does. Boom.
Boom, boom, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely does. And I think, again, you mentioned CapEx, Paul, and I think this is a really crucial thing, because when you've got energy management and behavior change and, trying to aim for the low-hanging fruit where, you're just eliminating waste, basically, then that's all brilliant. And that's, quite easy to do if you've got buy-in from everybody. It's quite easy to see if you've got an energy monitoring system in place where you can see where the power is going. You can see if there's any waste and you can identify it and eliminate it. But when you've got solar PV as well, you can kind of you can create a system that is self-funding, completely self-funding. So one of our sayings is no capex, no problem. You know, there's that much money out there that knows how much of a safe bet solar PV is. They will lend to finance solar PV in such a way that the energy savings on your bills are more than the finance repayments from day one.
Mm.
So if you can get a capex return on investment in 3 or 4 years, but you didn't have the capex, or you didn't have the capex for another year or 2 years, then why wait? Because you can get a short-term set finance or kind of HP type arrangement where the finance house will pay for the system and the repayments are less than your bill savings. So it's just redirecting some of the money that you were sending to the power company anyway every month. You're just redirecting it and splitting it up between a lower power bill and a finance repayment. And we can structure it so that it can either be cash neutral, or if you wanted it to be, it can be cash positive quite significantly. So if you took an asset finance deal, for example, over 7 years or 8 years or 10 years, you could be saving tens of thousands of pounds in positive cash flow, and you haven't had to lay out any capex at all. You haven't had to, go through several layers of management to get the capex signed off, and it can take two years to come to fruition. You can get it funded on a cash neutral or cash positive basis. So why wait?
Yeah, it's interesting now because this is your old career coming in, isn't it? The finance side of it. This is how.
Absolutely.
This is where it meets, and I presume you've got some really great, Andy and people like that, technical people around your business as well, haven't you?
Absolutely. We're a 23 strong team now, and 2/3 of those guys are on the operational, technical, and design side. So we've got, a couple of people in finance, a couple of people in business support. We've got 4 in the sales team, and the rest are technical and delivery professionals. So we are very engineering led. We do a hell of a lot of work up front to design and specify the system that best suits the client and their site. We're not just a company that will fill the roof with solar, put a price on it and say, take it or leave it. We do a lot of due diligence up front with analysis of half-hourly data, discussions with the client about integrating into the building, their future plans with electrification of vehicles, electrification of heat, and automation, like we said. We'll have all of those discussions during a pre-construction feasibility phase, which can often last 2 or 3 months, because at that stage we'll be looking at the roof structure. We'll get a structural engineer involved. We'll be liaising with the grid for permission to connect, of course, because you need G99 permission to install solar. It can take 2 or 3 months anyway. We need to know if there's any export restrictions going to be applied by the grid, any strengthening works needed, any controls needed to satisfy their restrictions in the area. So all of that gets done up front. So we iron out any uncertainties before we ask the client whether to go ahead or not. We don't ask for a commitment until we've done all of that work up front, and that's quite resource intensive, to be honest. It involves every part of the business, from the surveyors to the AC electrical designers to the roofing chartered structural engineers to the connections manager that looks after the grid services and the grid applications. All of that is done at pre-construction stage. So we never put a proposition to a client that we know hasn't been quantified and very, very carefully specified. And only then do we actually ask for green light to go ahead and actually deploy that project. So we are very engineering led.
Brilliant. Well, Gary, look, it's been a really great story, some of this, what you've been talking about. And I was very impressed from the first day I met you regarding your organization and some of the things you talk about. So it's come to that time where I'd like to put you on the spot. You've been on the spot all the way through this. Is there anything you can give back to our industry today as a takeaway?
Getting to think about the fact that solar PV is a foundation technology, I think is a really crucial one. Obviously, there's a lot of professionals in your industry that rightly say you should eliminate all of your wastage, make sure everything's monitored, change as much behavior as possible first, which is absolutely fine and agreeable. I would actually argue the case that once you deploy solar PV, it helps get that buy-in from the people anyway, because they can see on a TV and reception what the solar PV is producing from the roof,
And they can see it as
they'll
well. It's a visual thing,
they'll
isn't
see
it?
it
Yeah.
on the monitoring system. Yeah, they'll see the panels on the roof. They'll
Yeah.
see the digital display and reception to say, right, today we're running 100% off grid. That in itself is inspirational for people, and it'll help come up with the buy-in and all the ideas on how best to utilize that free power coming off the roof, as well as eliminating, it can run in parallel with eliminating wastage and also making the most of the free power that's coming off the roof. So I would say sometimes our industry can be guilty of putting too many options in front of customers. And one of my sayings is that when you do that, if you've got, if you do an energy audit and you've got 67 recommendations for the client to think about, where are they going to start? And again, of course, as professionals, we'll guide them towards those that we believe are most appropriate and the easiest wins, the low hanging fruit. However, you do get cases of paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
And that's a saying of mine. If you give too many complex engineering recommendations, then people get overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. I think, eliminating wastage and generating your own power should be the foundations, and then everything else can flow from that, is my view.
There is another takeaway I think you should also discuss, and that was the one you started out in the beginning when you were saying about how to explain it to an individual. Keep it simple, we don't need to overcomplicate it, do we, of how the system operates, what we're going to get out of it. And I think if you put that in line with the fact that, putting it on your roof is a massive statement. We've just done the London Stadium, okay? That has been a massive statement regarding that solar going on that roof. It's got loads of press coverage, the athletics, etc., and obviously the football. But there's a statement there that's bigger than a statement. £4 million on the solar. They spent 2 million on lighting, first of all. No one talked about that. Then they didn't hit the press, but the solar did. So it made a massive impact, and it's a statement to the industry, to the world, basically.
Absolutely, I think it's visible. It's something that can be used for PR and shareholders reports and you name it. It's a visible demonstration of your commitment to doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And again, it's not just about saying to potential clients, look how good we are, look how green we are. It's about attracting the best talent into your industry, into your company for recruitment. It's about retaining the good people that you've got because they can see you doing the right thing as well, and you care about the planet and you care about the future of climate change and everything. They see that the companies are acting and doing the right thing, and you can't put a price on that. You can't put a payback on that. That's difficult to measure, but has a massive impact on businesses that are there, that are purpose driven, are doing the right thing and demonstrating that they care. They care about the people they employ, they care about the clients, they care about the supply chain that they buy from, and they're demonstrating that they're a forward-thinking organisation that's moving in the right direction and thinking about the future. Yeah. So yeah, it's about legacy, isn't it, Paul? I think that I've been driven by leaving a positive legacy behind me. I don't know if I'll ever retire, but when I'm working less, let's say, I'd like to be able to sit on my sunbed on my solar powered yacht and bob around the Mediterranean if it's not too hot. And I don't want to regret not trying hard enough to make a positive impact on the world.
Yeah.
Life is short, but it's quite long to have regrets as well, I would say. Exactly. So my driving force has been, if I can, sit back when I've finished, this career and say, well, at least I gave it my all and I left the world in a slightly better position than it was if I wasn't in the renewables industry, then I'll be a happy man.
Well, based on what you've done so far, I think you're doing that, and well done to you for that. I'd like to say thank you very much for being a member of the network, and the contribution is amazing. I'd like to say thank you for today. Please, I apologise now. You've made complete perfect sense all the way through this. Everything you've said, and it's even made me think about the entry level and what we could do with that solar and how it does make a very big difference. So thank you for today. It's been really great.
It's been a pleasure, Paul. Thanks for having me.
And lastly, you and your family, stay safe in these times. Thank you to my guest for joining me today on Energy Speaks Back. I'm very proud and humbled to have the opportunity to interview energy experts from around the world, and I hope you found today's episodes of value. Don't forget to listen to the previous episodes because they are full of insights to help you make a real impact on energy efficiency. And remember, tiny changes that we make today can bring us profound savings in the future. Together, we can drive change and make a difference. That leaves me with one more thing to say. Please, you and your family, be safe in these times.